On behalf of USI Commercial, I'd like to welcome you to our presentation. It's all about financials. We'll wait just a few more minutes for late arrivals. We know your time is valuable, and we thank you for your patience. The webinar will start shortly. All right, looks like we have the majority of people logged in, so I think we can get started. The agenda for today, we're going to go through some introductions and participation guidelines. Then we'll jump into the presentation. We'll go through the objectives of the presentation and the actual discussion itself. And at the end, we're going to do audience participation and a question and answer session. My name is Martin Smith. I'm the Director of Training here at USI Commercial. I'll be your moderator today. And our expert is David Rothbart. He's our Director of Reserve Study Operations. For those of you who are unfamiliar with David, David has completed over 5,000 inspections with 130 reserve studies throughout his 14 years in the industry, so a lot of experience there. David is a certified home inspector by the Department of Professional Regulation in Virginia. He's a CAI certified reserve specialist, a certified environmental professional through NSEC. He's also certified by the National Radon Proficiency Program as a radon measurement technician and also a WDO inspector. Now, a little bit about USI Commercial for those of you who are not familiar with us. We have over 25 years of service and expertise with national coverage and industry-leading technology. National coverage assures we have local employee service delivery, and that would be by skilled reserve study specialists. We also have centralized and standardized reporting, plus professional engineers on staff to assure a well-executed reserve study result. USI Commercial offers many other inspection services, and this provides flexibility to meet any other association property needs you might have, like construction monitoring and property condition assessments, just to name a couple of them. Now with that, I'm going to hand it over to David. So take it away, David.
Thank you so much for joining us for this webinar. It's all about the financials. Overview of what we're going to discuss today is how to properly manage your reserve funds so that you're not robbing Peter to pay Paul, the pitfalls of a lump sum reserve account, and reserve fund percentage threshold management. Associations maintain funds so they can deal with long-term needs for maintaining and replacing the common components. These reserves do not fund the association's everyday expenses or needs, as the operating budget serves that purpose. Without an appropriately funded reserve, it may force the association to require special assessments or loans to make necessary repairs or replacement of components they need. When an association chooses to impose a special assessment as a standard method of managing component repair replacement when there are issues, it is ultimately unfair to the members of the association. Any owner who sells their unit or property prior to a major repair receive the full benefit and use of that component without contributing to the costs maintained for that common component. Well-funded reserves may, in fact, increase the market value of the property. Once a reserve fund is established, it should only be used for appropriate expenditures. Use the reserve fund for repairs or replacement of major capital items. This includes all common components under the association's duty to maintain and repair. Examples of this would be roads, roofing, capital painting. Oftentimes, after a major expense is paid out of the reserve fund, there is a time period when contributions to the reserve fund must be increased to build the funds back in order to maintain the association. This can occur with unexpected repairs or when the estimates for repairs or replacement that were planned were below the actual cost based on current bids. Minor repairs should be made from the operating account and should be budgeted for. These are things that would not necessarily be considered reserve line items. They're small and they're not fiscally responsible to be put into the actual reserves. Developer transition related items should be paid for from the reserve fund. If a developer is responsible for replacements to the common components and is not willing to do so, the association may have no other choice than to conduct those repairs or replacements out of the reserve funds. If money is recovered from the developer, it should be used to reimburse the reserve funds. In the event there is no recoup of the monies, the association may have to reevaluate its reserve fund and adjust contributions to make up for the prior use of the funds. And in this case, loans may be necessary, special assessments. These are things that, of course, are not desirable by any association. Occasionally, a major project arises and the association does not have sufficient funds set aside to cover the expenses, and it does not wish to special assess, so it obtains a loan to cover the gap in the funds. This type of loan uses future association dues as collateral for the loan. The interest expense of these types of loans may be charged to the reserve fund. The expenditure itself, if the debt service and the future assessments required for the debt repayment, should be included in the reserve account budget. When these types of loans are done, it should be consultation with the association's accountant to make sure that everything is properly secured. It is most certainly a mistake to borrow funds from your reserve accounts to cover items in your operating budget. Borrowing funds in this manner can have a negative tax consequence and can lead to the association down an unhealthy financial path, which could potentially ruin the association financially. To guard against this type of problem, it is important to monitor the operating budget regularly to make sure that any deficit for the year is appropriately addressed in any subsequent year, and that the fees are adjusted accordingly to the reserve funds to ensure they are used to their proper purpose. Although a robust reserve fund is highly desirable, there's sometimes too much variation in properties to have one specific formula for allocating of reserve funds. At USI Commercial, we use the full or component funding method in our studies. The reasoning behind this is that we feel it provides the association with direct oriented method of managing their reserve funds and creates a clear roadmap for future reserve funding. Lump sum reserve accounts can create havoc with the association's management of funds due to the following: no specific earmark for fund distribution. This creates a true rob Peter to pay Paul situation over time, and it's analogous to running a household without a budget. When the association lumps all of their monies together without earmarking funds for specific component repair replacement, it is defeating the purpose of the reserve study. The association, again, can find themselves in a true rob Peter to pay Paul situation. Now, I'm certainly not implying that the association needs separate bank accounts for all their component funds, but just earmarks of where these monies are directed. The best way to avoid lump sum reserve accounts is to divide the reserve accounts into financial folders to ensure the component repair replacements have ample funds earmarked specifically for that purpose. The financially responsible way of accomplishing this, of course, is through a professional reserve study. Some examples of this would be monies put aside according to the reserve study for roof repair replacement, or road resurfacing, or seal coating, or capital painting, to name a few. Let's explore some examples of how this can be accomplished. For example purposes, we will say that the association has $50,000 in the reserve account and has the following known reserve expenses. You can see these reserve funds match the projected allocations for component repair replacement. Now let's look at how the association can run into an unhealthy financial situation by lumping their reserve funds together. The following reflects actual costs of the association. Going back to the roofing, they actually spent $20,000 for the roofing. They spent, $25,000 for the roofing, $20,000 for the asphalt. Now they've got $7,000 for the painting, which is falling beyond the funds available, and the $8,000 allocated for pool resurfacing is again beyond the funds available. You can see that by not compartmentalizing the reserve funds, the association overspent their budget for roofing and asphalt, leaving no money for painting and pool resurfacing. When the reserve study report is packaged, we help the association plan for allocation of reserve funds at given times during the course of the study so that they know how to compartmentalize their funds accordingly so there is ample money set aside for each component's eventual repair or replacement. The reserve fund percentage threshold is basically a financial picture of how healthy the association is. At USI Commercial, we like to see a reserve fund percentage no lower than 60 to 64% over consecutive years. This, of course, will vary depending on the years during the study that there are large capital expenditures for repairs or replacement of components. Generally, percentages above 70% show sound financial health. Let's look at an example which we can see here of how reserve fund percentages are presented in the study. As you can see, the first 8 years of this study, the association's funds are lower than the desired threshold of 60 to 64%. And the reason is that in this particular case, they had consecutive years of significant expenditure based on their reserve funds. So after the first 8 years, they've been able to build up their funds enough to allow for a healthier financial condition for the association. So let's dissect this chart a little bit to make it a little clearer. And you can see how we have arrived at our conclusions. You'll see the first column shows the calendar year in the study, and then it's followed by the annual payment. The annual payment is actually the total allocated each year towards the reserves. The third column is the projected reserve expenditure for repair or replacement of components for that particular fiscal year. The fourth column shows the net reserves in-house after the slated expenditure for the fiscal calendar year. And then finally, we have the fifth column with the percentages in there, and that shows the percentage funded, meaning what percent of the projected reserve capital the association has available. The percent funded shows how much they have left from their annual payment. Several methods available to correct a continually sliding percent funded without recovery in sight are to increase the monthly allocation of reserves from the monthly dues. So if you have a set amount of money each month that comes out of the actual gross dues going towards reserves, we may recommend that that be increased to make up for that deficit. Another way would be to just increase the dues per member, and that would be used in the event that raising the allocation would not be financially allowable or would not serve the purpose of increasing the reserve account. So then what we would do is we would recommend that the actual monthly dues per member be increased. Two last resort items, which nobody likes to hear: special assessments and loans. And that would really be necessary in a very severe financial deficit. In conclusion, it's important to remember that theoretically a perfect funding plan achieves 100% funding. This doesn't mean that anything less than 100% renders an association fiscally unhealthy. The perfect funding level, probably 70% or better, is considered a very healthy financial situation for an association. Additionally, it's quite normal for the percentage fund to vary from year to year over the period of the study, and that is going to be related to capital expenditures. So if in one particular year there's a large capital expenditure, major roofing or mill and overlay of roadways, that of course is going to cause a deficit in that percent funded, possibly for a couple of years, but then a healthy community is going to be able to recover and bring that percent funded back up, hopefully above that 70% period. Our account executives and local reserve study specialists would be happy to visit you and review your reserve study needs. It's easy to request a proposal. You can do it online. We have a web address that you can go to. very easy, very simple online form that you can fill out to create a request for a proposal. And also our account executives will be happy to provide a presentation on reserve studies to your managers, or we can do it via webinars to your board members, which is very, very helpful. I turn it back to you, Martin.
All right, thanks, David. We have got actually a lot of questions to go through, but unfortunately we have run out of time. So on behalf of USI Commercial and our presenter David Rothbart, my name is Martin Smith. We'd like to thank you again for your interest and participation in the webinar today. We will answer your questions. We'll do that by email. We're going to have more webinars planned, and we'll send out announcements by email, so watch out for those. We'll also post these on our website. We hope you'll consider USI Commercial for your future reserve study needs, and we hope you'll join us again. Thank you, and enjoy the rest of your day.